Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Becky Robinson. Grace Under Pressure is that show that deals with the caring, the commitment, what we call the soft stuff when we exert it for the benefit of others. And when you do it as a leader, as you will very much discover that Becky is, who she also works with leaders, we do it with a singular purpose, to bring people together for common cause. Welcome, Becky Robinson.
Thank you, John. It is so great to be here with you this afternoon.
My pleasure. Let me tell folks about you, Becky. You are the founder and CEO of Weaving Influence. I've always loved the name of that. You are a full-service marketing agency that specializes in digital and integrated marketing services and public relations for, of all things, authors, but also business leaders, trainers, coaches, and thought leaders. And you're in business for more than 10 years, which in this era is tremendous. That's, you've launched a mere 150 books. Wow, wow. And now you joined those ranks with your first book, which is called Reach: Create the Biggest Possible Audience for Your Message, Book, or Cause. Becky, it is an honor to have you on the show today.
It is an honor to be here with you, John, because you have written a book or two yourself over the past few years.
And you have helped me, my friend. So thank you. So
my pleasure.
You are an experienced digital marketer in all things. So why were you possessed to write a book?
Well, I will tell you, John, that it kind of took me a while to get over knowing how hard it is to market and sell a book. And I think that kept me from doing it sooner. Although also what kept me from doing it sooner was getting a no when I floated ideas to my publisher, in all transparency. But, I think a book is a really wonderful way to bring our ideas to life, and so that they can reach more people and to be able to scale our ideas. So those things that we hear ourselves saying over and over again, if we package them in a book, and in my case, I also read them aloud in my audiobook, then people around the world have the chance to benefit from them, even if I never get to meet them face to face. So it was important to me to do that.
And I want a little heads up. Even if you are not a book author, this interview is for you if you have a message that you care about and want other people to hear. So, and you came up with a phrase called true reach. What does that mean, Becky?
Sure. So many years ago, what I noticed with the clients that I was serving is that many of them had just the most amazing career journeys and expertise that they added to the world in terms of their offline life. So within their organizations, often within their universities or academic settings, they were well known for their core areas of expertise. And then when you would go online, there would be this huge gap between how the person was showing up online and how they were showing up in real life. And so, in the early days of my company, I called this influence incongruence, which, is kind of a mouthful and nobody really liked it. So now I call it the influence gap. And in order to have what I call true reach, what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to share the same story and value and content and expertise in online spaces as you're sharing offline spaces. And the way that we position ourselves to have the greatest possible impact for our work and reach the largest audience is to do both at the same time.
Great, powerful. And that's where the power of reach, I would say in your work, it's the reach leads to resonance. In other words, I am moved by this message and I want to know more. Do you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, I think resonance is connected to value, John, because whatever our core content area is, there is an audience who needs that content. And the resonance comes when we can share our message in a way that reaches the people who most need it.
Great. So the question you get all the time, maybe 5 times a day, is how can I do it real fast?
Yeah, and you absolutely can't, unless you're...
Okay, we'll see you. Hi.
Yeah, right. So unless you're born to like wealthy or famous parents, or, unless you have some kind of magic bolt of lightning that strikes. Most of us have to do the hard work of showing up to add value for a while before we can build an audience who's interested. If I think back, John, to the early days that I got online, I started writing a leadership blog back in 2009. And I hustled, I got to tell you, and I networked with people like you, Wally Bach, Dan McCarthy at the time had a leadership blog, all the names that you can think of that were out there back 10, 12, 15 years ago, blogging about leadership. And, I made myself a pest until they started to, include me in those conversations, and until I could build an audience of people who wanted to read what I had to share. But, that was 13 years ago. And, here I am that many years later, finally with a book in the market. So it's not anything that most of us can do overnight.
Well, I mean, 13 years, basically in this world, that's an overnight success. So, and I think I'd like to point out something for someone who is considering writing their first book or getting their message out in a public forum. What are the kinds of things they can do now, even before the book comes out, or even if it's written? So how do you spade the ground, Becky?
Sure. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have a place on the internet where you can very clearly bring the value of your work to life. So like earlier today, I talked to a woman, she has a book coming out in December. She doesn't have a website yet. So advice number one is, buy your name as a domain if you can find it and get a website up. And when you build the website, make sure that it very clearly articulates those topics that you want to be known for, so that when people get there, they can very quickly see if the content that you have resonates with them or if they need it or not. Beyond that, you really just need to start showing up in online spaces. So whatever it is that you're an expert about, or whatever you've done in the world, you need to bring that to life. Social media is a great way to find and form relationships, but I also believe really, really strongly that you want to get people from social media to your own website. Case in point, yesterday, Elon Musk bought Twitter. Think what you want to about Elon Musk. Twitter might change. And so if we build our entire online presence on a platform like Twitter that can get bought out one day and radically change or disappear, then we're going to be in hot water and we're not going to be able to have access to our audience. So it is far more valuable to build an audience of people who come to your website to find your content. And not only that, they opt into your email list. And in that way, you can have that consistent presence to know where to find them and not rely on these shifting channels that are, one day popular and the next day not. I don't know, John, if you ever invested time in Google Plus, for example. All those minutes that I spent trying to grow Google Plus, it was all for nothing.
Yeah. No, I got in trouble. I wrote something about Google Plus, which the Google Plus community did not like. So that was my Google Plus. Anyway, but as far as, but you can, I was going to say a way to engage your platform, and this is not rocket science, but I think it maybe give a window into something, is I've seen people just simply repeatedly simple, you can call them aphorisms, quotes, whatever, around your theme. And so if you're writing about leadership, it'll be your thoughts on leadership in a sentence or something like that. Put it pretty graphic. Is that useful, or is that a waste of time, Becky?
I think it is useful. I think that when we can share our ideas or expertise in short bursts, it can drive people to be interested in them. It can capture their attention, if it's beautiful, if it's on brand for you, you can have the right word at the right time that will draw someone to you and help you become memorable. So yeah, I love that approach.
Great. Now let's get into true reach, which is the core of your book. And there are 4 key principles, and we'll take them one at a time. Value, consistency, longevity, and generosity. Let's take the first one, value. What does that mean?
Sure. And I've spoken a bit about that already, but the idea is that if you want to attract an audience, you have to have something worth listening to. So you want to start with something that's of value. For my book, I interviewed a guy named David Cooper-Ryder, and David Cooper-Ryder fueled an idea called appreciative inquiry. And one of the things that he says is that, good work fuels itself. And so if you create work that's of value, you will draw people to you to be interested in it, as opposed to people who show up in online spaces and all they bring is like some kind of superficiality. Sorry about that. And I think about right now on social media, what's so popular is reels. Well, that it's so thin. Like there's nothing, if you watch a reel, if it's kind of superficial, it's not true content. You can build an audience from that. You can entertain people. But as we think about thought leadership and building an audience for lasting impact, you really have to have something that's of value to your audience that you're showing up with.
Great. So next thing, and I think this is a really hardcore principle, consistency. What does that mean in social media?
So yeah, consistency means that you need to keep showing up on a regular basis. So in the early days of blogging, I used to compare it to like when you had a TV show that you like to watch. So back when Friends was popular, it was on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. And if you wanted to watch it, you showed up at Thursday night at 8 p.m. because that's when it was on. Well, in our world now, when most of our entertainment or learning is on demand, people still want to know that they can count on you. No one follows a social account that doesn't have any posts. So right?
Yeah, I guess so. That's a way to keep it there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the thing about consistency is that can be an overwhelming concept. So when I say consistency, I don't mean that you have to tweet all day, every day, or that you have to post every day. But what I mean by consistency is you have to have a regular, predictable approach to showing up with value so that people know to look to you for value. Some people will choose, like Dan Rockwell has, to post a blog post every day, every weekday for 10 years. But for other people, that might only be once a month or once every other week or something like that. But you want to choose a cadence that you can sustain over time. You never want, to just flare up and then disappear.
And toward that, I think, work at the pace that works for you. And say you blog once a month or post something once a month, you could do quotes from that post throughout the month to keep it alive. Would that make sense, Becky?
It sure would. And in fact, in chapter 7 of my book, I talk about the fact that content is a flexible asset. And so if you have one article and you have some support, that one article could become many posts throughout the month. And you're reaching different audiences in different times in different ways. So that really can help you grow your reach.
Great. Now, the big kahuna or challenge or whatever is social media. What role does social media play in true reach?
Yeah, well, social media is the place where we can find and form new relationships. So the beauty of social media is that we can reach an unlimited number of people. And hopefully what we can do is grow the number of people who are following us. But again, as I was saying before, that is of limited value if you don't have an enduring connection that helps you stay memorable. I would also say about social media, one of my biases is to be as authentic as possible. I think that people are really drawn to what's real, they don't want to just follow like a flashy account. Like they want to know the person. People connect to people. So social media plays a role in true reach in that it gives you a place where you can show up authentically to build real relationships. That's where the impacts can come in.
Great. Now, of the 4 principles, we've talked consistency, and we've talked the first one, which was value. Now we come to longevity. What does that, or excuse me, let's do longevity. What does that mean?
Yeah. So it's really having a long-term view. And I have a story for you on this. I just noticed this morning, there's an author I follow, a nonfiction author called Shauna Niequist. And she launched her 6th book. I think it came out the same day my book came out. She made the New York Times list, the Wall Street Journal list, the USA Today list. If you have a hope of becoming bigger, really the only way is to stick around over time. So if you think about the top and best known authors, they didn't just write one book, they wrote many books. And it wasn't their first book that got them on the list. It was, maybe their 4th or 5th book. So John, you and I have a shared connection in Whitney Johnson. And Whitney's latest book, Smart Growth, recently did make, I think it was USA Today and another bestseller list. I don't remember which one, maybe Washington Post. Not sure. Yeah. Anyhow, she made these lists. And to my knowledge, it's possible she made a big list like that before. But to my knowledge, that was the first time that she made a big list. Well, Whitney's been building her online presence for a decade. So we all get this idea that we're going to show up with our first book. It's going to be our amazing book. We're going to make the list. And it's just highly unlikely. So if you want to create greater reach, which is a bigger audience and lasting impact, you have to be willing to invest your energy and time and effort over the long haul. And, Jordan Clark talks about that in her book, The Long Game.
Right. And Whitney, to her credit, has been doing this, as you said, for more than a decade. And she has a LinkedIn Live show that she has been doing very well. And she has all kinds of folks on there. And it's just a practice that she does. And she has a wonderful newsletter as well. So a tour de force that she offers. Now, here's a topic close to my heart, but I would not have thought that it applies to True Reach. And it's generosity. What does that mean, Becky?
Sure. Well, it definitely is an unexpected factor. It's not one that people would immediately think of. But as I interviewed people and I really looked at what it takes to create True Reach, in time after time after time, I saw the people who were making the biggest difference in online spaces were the ones who showed up to freely give of their expertise, of their energy, of their time, of their content. On the path to creating reach, you might have to give away a lot of content. I've noticed with authors, the more copies of their book they can give away, potentially the more books they can sell. And I want to say, John, that I realized that me saying that generosity is like this unexpected factor, it's not possible for everyone. And so, I know that I speak from a place of privilege when I say, hey, give it away. Not everyone can afford to do so. But, to whatever level you can afford to be generous, whether that's only just with your encouragement or inspiration or amplification of others, what I've noticed is that generosity really draws people to you. It really makes you memorable. And so it certainly belonged among the 4 commitments that I think people need to make to create that true reach.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I consider myself something of a world expert on the topic of giving away books.
So, yeah, how many have you given away, John?
I don't know. Not enough per se. I'm always giving them away. Yesterday I just sent out 30, and today I'm going to send out another 50. Or maybe not today, whatever. So I don't make I'm not doing that to praise myself as a person of great. I don't even think of it as generosity. Honestly, I think of it as getting the message out there. But hey, if it benefits something our colleague Marshall Goldsmith talks about, and that's hey, because sometimes first-time authors, as you've had this conversation, oh, well, these are my ideas. And so the question is, why publish? Somebody takes your idea and they run with it, fine. Why would you even not write a book? So I think the writer's soul is one of generosity, because I have something to share and I want to share it, be it a story, be it a fact, be it a point of view, be it a philosophy. I want to share something. So.
Well, sure. And, I mentioned David Cooperrider a little bit ago, John, and David Cooperrider made this really critical decision back in the early days of Appreciative Inquiry when he decided not to copyright his ideas. And as a result, his ideas have spread across the entire world. They've been used and cherished and adapted and built upon, and people collaborate around these ideas. And if David had decided, well, this is like my idea, I want to keep it for me, then chances are the ideas would not have changed the world and changed our organizations the way they have. So really the only way to let your ideas soar is to be willing to let them go free.
Wow, what a wonderful story. I do know Mr. Cooperrider's work. I did not know that he had not tried to copyright it and he gave it away. And that's a great thing. And I would say that's an act of grace. And then you reach more people that way. And there's something else let's not be, I will not be so altruistic when I say this, but yes, people will take your ideas, but you're the one that generated them, and your interpretation of the way you communicate it, the way you teach it, the way you speak about it, do a video, whatever, write about it in the future, that's you. So others can take your idea and build upon it. So it's a generative cycle, I would like to say. So
yes, I agree. That's a powerful way to describe it, John.
Now, here's a little nuts and bolts thing. So in our era of clutter, and I still use email. I don't know if anybody else does, but does email marketing still resonate, Becky? So.
Yeah, I really do think that it does. And let me tell you why, John. My email list has about 15,000 people on it. So on any given day, if I send out an email to 15,000 people, if I look at my open rates, maybe a third of those people will open my email. That's about 5,000 people. Now, if you compare that to my LinkedIn following here on this lovely LinkedIn channel, which I, appreciate very much, I have 5,000 to 6,000 followers. And if I look at the posts that I put up on any given day, depending upon the engagement that I'm able to create, I might see 40 people see my post. I might see 100. I might see 200. But I'm not reaching nearly as large a percentage of my audience with my LinkedIn content as I am through my own email list. And the other thing is the email list is something I own and control. So at any point, if I want to personally connect with anyone who's given me permission to market to them through email marketing, I can send them a note. And what I've noticed, John, is that my email list knows me more than I know them, which, I'd love to change that. But I had a call this morning with a woman. She wrote a book. She said, "Oh, you came highly recommended by my colleague, blah, blah, blah." Insert the guy's name. I never heard of him before, but
Yeah.
he has heard of me because he's read and received the value that I send through my email. So, yes, there's noise and clutter, but I think if you're creating content of value and you've followed all the protocols to get permission before you email people, chances are when your email lands with them, they're going to be happy to receive it.
Well, I will say something about you, Becky, and what your email is. And it gets back to the very name of your company, which is Weaving Influence, which I've known of ever almost since its inception. And by the way, you are in Lambertville, Michigan, and I'm in Ann Arbor. So we're not very far apart, and we've actually met. So,
yes, we have.
Believe it or not, I know you're a real person. Whether I am or not, I don't know.
You are. I've been to your house.
Okay. So the thing is what you have created is community. And I knew that you have that's why you have 15,000 followers. I think people feel that they belong, and it's the way you share of yourself, the way you share your ideas. And so when you launch your book, Reach, it's going to resonate with those people. So that's a pat on the back to you. And community is very important to me now. Exploring this. So do you ever think is there such a thing as a digital community, or are we kidding ourselves, Becky? So
I definitely think there is such a thing as digital community. I see it come to life all the time. So I'll share another story. Yesterday, I hosted a virtual celebration for a client of mine. His name's Bob Teedy, John, and he's been my client for about 10 years. So Bob does this blog, Leading with Questions. He's been putting out content twice a week for about 10 years. And what I noticed when we held this—
and I will say salute to Bob because he gives it good content.
Yeah, he does, for sure. I'm in awe of what Bob has done in terms of the way he's grown his influence and his list and all of that. So I host this meeting yesterday, more than 200 people coming in, and all of them talking about the massive impact that Bob's choice to build his blog has had on them. And so what I see demonstrated there is the fact that if we create content that's of value to people, we do build community around us. Sometimes those communities, they overlap and people get to know one another, or other times, we're creating community with those people in our audience who choose to listen to us. But certainly when we show up in the world with that intention, just amazing and magical things can happen.
Well, you mentioned Bob's example, and I would say he's a perfect client for you. And why I mean that is because another client of yours is Chip Bell. Both those gentlemen are, if I had to describe them by a word that's common to them, would be generosity. Chip is a very generous person, as is Bob, and that resonates in their content. And so it's a virtual circle, if you will. So virtuous.
Yeah, certainly so. And I'm amazed by the new connections that happen all the time if you choose to show up in that way, to try to share what you have with others. You know what I love, and again, I think this comes somewhat from a place of privilege or a place of abundance. But when I show up on a call with an author who has a book to launch, I want to give as much value away in that 30-minute kind of screening call as I can, because no matter what happens, if I say something that's of use and they go out and use it, then their messages can spread even more effectively. So what a gift to be able to meet people when they have passion around their ideas and to be able to equip them to share them in a broader way.
Right. And, that's kind of its, the quick word for that would be what we used to call karma, but also what goes around comes around. And when you do good things for others with no expectation, sometimes it comes back and helps you out. So, and at the same time, no good deed goes unpunished at times. So
I
we
hear
all
that,
do.
John.
So, Becky, we are racing through this interview, and as you know, I ask all of my guests a story about grace. Do you have one that you would like to share?
I do. I would love to share a story about grace, John. And this story goes back to, I think, 2011. And, when I sit here 10 years into my company, now with my own book, there are countless people I could name who have opened doors of opportunity for me or made introductions. And all of that feels like grace. But I want to go back to the original person who unlocked all of this for me. And her name is Jessie Lynn Stoner. And Jessie Lynn Stoner is my story of grace because, at a time before I really knew what I was doing in building a company, she was willing to make a key introduction that opened up a whole world to me, actually several key introductions. So she first introduced me to Whitney Johnson, who became my first client at that time. And then she introduced me lovingly and gracefully into the Barrett Kohler publishers community, which, was a door to many of the clients I've served over the years, which was a door to the collaborative partnership that I have with Barrett Kohler, where they send authors to me and they hire me themselves, which was a door to my own book now, 12 years later, however many years it is. And so Jessie Lynn Stoner also introduced me to her niece who worked in my company in the early years, who's a person I treasure, like a sister or a daughter. I'm not sure which, probably both. So Jessie is just, to me, the picture of grace in the generous way that she opened doors for me.
Well, what a wonderful story, because I know Jessie, and she's actually been on this show. So
amazing.
And small world it is. And she's been so generous to me too. And so we're building this theme of reach, which I hadn't thought about before, of generosity. What goes around comes around. And I think that's so important in our world right now. And I think it's right now we're heightened concern about social media because, our social discourse is too often not positive. But I think what you have proven and what authors need to have as their true north, understand that positive messages do resonate. Would you agree with that, Becky?
Yeah, wholeheartedly.
Great. And so, we're coming to the end. And I always ask every guest, how can people find you, Becky?
Yeah, there are two ways for people to find me. So I mentioned, one of the first things you need to do is have your own website with your own domain. I happen to own BeckyRobinson.com. So that's really easy. If you want to find me and particularly learn more about my book, you can go to BeckyRobinson.com. If you're interested in finding my organization, working with us as a digital marketing partner, or getting some guidance as you think about your own book journey or thought leadership journey, you can find us at weavinginfluence.com. And of course, you can find me on all the social media platforms. My favorite one right now, John, is Instagram. It's the one I write content for myself and, really enjoy, but I'm on all the other channels as well, but not TikTok. I'm holding out on that one.
Well, that's okay. There's only so many hours in the day, or in social media terms, only so many minutes in the day, whatever. So, Becky, it's been a pleasure to have you. I know you are extremely busy because the book just launched last week, and now you're playing catch up with your business. So thank you for making time for us today. And with that, we'll sign out.
Thank you, John.